Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to what I believe is our last scheduled meeting of the Warrant Committee. Our agenda is relatively straightforward, and the first order of business is to accept the minutes of the last meetings as circulated. Everybody got the electronic copies, I'm guessing. Yep. And are there any changes to any of them? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. All accepted and approved. The next order is, we're going to go a little bit out of order, but that's okay, is to take a vote to empower the chair to sign any transfers that might happen before the end of our fiscal year on June 30th, which we do every year, and we did last year, and it was actually handy to be able to do that. So, motion.
Aye.
We have to put it in the form of a motion.
I concur.
Okay, thank you. I'm grateful for that. So, will someone give me a motion to empower the Warrant Committee Chair to sign transfers as needed from time to time through June 30th on behalf of the Warrant Committee? Motion has been made. Do we have a second? Do we have any discussion on that? I'm not taking the money and going to Las Vegas.
There isn't any money.
There isn't any money. It's true. Very good point. There isn't any money.
Actually, you owe.
Yeah, we owe. That's right. Yeah, we owe. That's right. Sad but true. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. No opposed. Very good. Okay. One other thing that I wanted to be sure of is before we begin this is that we have no questions that anybody has about the proceedings that we've done so far, and everybody's clear about the order of business that we've conducted, etc.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. So the last piece that we have on the agenda is something that I thought might be worthwhile bringing up, given the discussions that we have had in this past 6 months about the budget, the fiscal year 20 budget as projected. And I took the liberty of expanding the comments that I made at the town meeting into a little more detail and to distill them down to this short presentation that will highlight some of the issues I think the town is going to be facing in the very near future, because we have issues which we've already discussed that we all know about, that we've all voted on. Primarily, the town is building 3 new fire stations. The town has been approached and we approved and recommended to town meeting, which was adopted. The establishment of a school building committee, given that the census at the schools is way beyond anybody's expectation at this point. It has grown tremendously and is now at, I don't want to say crisis stage, but they're full. There's no room to go anywhere with anybody, and in the nice weather they'll be having the classes outside, and I know as a kid we like that, but they might have to have them outside because there's just no room. That's where we are. There also are a couple of other structural things that we have to talk about as a town, but Lynn, you can do the next slide. And again, we're going to first look at the projected revenues that we have for the town and the flexibility that we really don't have as our general revenues are dependent upon property tax revenues. And as we all know, the construction projects that we are going to be facing between the fire stations and the schools and just general maintenance that are coming up, the fire stations, the school will likely have a large percentage bonded. But there's debt service associated with that, which we have to also address. And then finally, special education as a component of the town's budget has been growing remarkably fast. And I think all of us were rather shocked at the nature and the magnitude of it as a percentage of the school budget and as a percentage of the town budget, as it is just absorbing a very large percentage of resources, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change because there is no funding. It is an unfunded mandate. We're required by the state, and the town has to determine for these needy students precisely what they are entitled to have, and then to pay for it, and to pay for transportation, which is not an easy thing, and we've seen the budget just go crazy. But the issues that we have are all integral to what we are going to look forward to figuring out in the next 2 years. Okay, Lynn. Here we see the revenues. The total general budget is the light green, and our property taxes are here. These are the property tax revenues. This is the growth of the general budget projected out. This is fiscal year 19. This is the gap that we have to fill with state-funded mandates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is 2020. We still have a gap. okay? But the gap is widening significantly in 2020-21. So we are just, and into 2022. So graphically we can see that we are going to be out of kilter significantly, and without an override, a significant override this time, we're going to have some issues that we have to bring forward to the town meeting and to the select board, and they're very uncomfortable, I think, if you keep going. Lynn, next one, please. Okay, so if we're looking at what our total general budget is, okay, this is the total budget for the town, the green. The yellow component up top for the next 2 years is an annualized illustration of the debt service associated if we had to bond 100% of the schools and the firehouses over 2 years, okay? And property taxes are only here. So you can see that the differential is, again, very significant in each year. And you know, getting the bonding will be fine. Everybody's proud of Milton's AAA rating. I'm proud of the AAA rating, but the AAA rating will definitely go because we're going to have to take on such a large amount of debt, and the debt service is going to be, you know, extremely cumbersome to maintain the services that we want to maintain for the town based on the tax revenues that are seen in the red line. So you can see the disparity where we're not even at 115 million. We're just slightly over 110. I think the projection was 112 million in property tax revenues in 2 years, and you're still looking at expenses that are about 123 million. So there's a significant gap that has to be filled. And yes, we fill it with some fees, we fill it with a few other things, but we can't count on those to be consistent. We can't count on the state to bail us out. And again, we have to look at these numbers as real issues going forward. Okay, Lynn. So the debt service requirements are enumerated here. We know about the fire station. The assumption was that the cost, I mean, you can drive a truck through the cost estimates, 12 to 20 million. Okay, I don't know where it's going to come in, but it's not going to be 5. So taking that at 20 million and the annual town meeting having approved the school building committee, a conservative estimate that I took was 5 to 15 million for any construction that would have to occur for the schools. I took 15 million as the extreme. So to be conservative, 20 million for the firehouses, 15 million for the schools, assuming 3% for 30 years on the bond, and you come up with approximately $1 million of interest and then $1 million of debt service if it's a usual municipal bond sinking fund of a customary structure. So at that point, we know that we have a significant increase in our expenses. And revenues, if we do recall the property tax revenue, we're a significant deficit. And so I bring myself back to a subject that we've talked about and it has been discussed around town, and the payment in lieu of taxes from our very distinguished not-for-profits, the large not-for-profits that are settling, that have been in Milton for many, many years. Now, the next slide shows you that the pilot revenues are relatively insignificant. This is where they are now. Okay, $941,000 is what's been negotiated with Milton Academy, Curry College, and Milton Hospital. Using the 25% of the estimated tax that would be due if they were taxable entities, you're still looking at $2,083,000, which is what, that's kind of, I don't want to say rule of thumb, but that is kind of the guideline that is used for most municipalities. 25% of the what would be an assessed taxable liability. If they were fully taxable, we'd be getting, so the town would get something like $8.3 million. And that would close the gap rather nicely. But of course, they're tax-exempt entities. You can't ask for that. You can't expect it. But of this $941,000 that has been assessed or agreed to informally, the town has accepted gratefully only $100,000 that these enterprises have paid, and that $100,000 came from Curry College. So Milton Academy has not paid a nickel of theirs, nor has Milton Hospital, BID Milton, I should say. So and I'm not saying anything that isn't true because I did verify this. So we do have some issues at hand. I think that there are some changes one has to recognize. Once upon a time, certainly Milton Hospital and Milton Academy served a large percentage of the town. I mean, kids went to Milton Academy, a large number of Milton children, native Milton residents, went to Milton Academy. That I don't believe is the same case now. And Milton Hospital was the cottage hospital for Milton residents. That's certainly not the case now. So when these institutions were serving the town, intellectually you can say, okay, fine, they deserve a break. Well, you know, they're making some pretty good revenues from non-Milton residents, and they're benefiting from the town of Milton and the services. And if we wanted to go further and look at what was being spent on the children of Milton Academy faculty members who are living in the town without paying property taxes, the number would just, the balance would fall farther into the town's favor than into Milton Academies. So one of the issues that I think needs to be addressed by the select board and by the annual town meeting is a discussion with our not-for-profit citizens of sharing the burden a little bit more, because they are consumers of town services in large part, and what they are paying in, even on this negotiated basis, hasn't been paid. And looking at something that's a little more equitable is in everybody's interest, particularly theirs if they want the services to continue. Because if the services are cut because we don't have the cash, they suffer as well. Next slide. Effectively, what we've talked about up to this point is that the town really needs to become a little more aggressive with the payment in lieu of taxes discussion. One of the subjects that we could also look at is devising some sort of a fee for residents in the college or at Milton Academy who are non-residents of Milton who are boarding there. I mean, a hotel occupancy tax, it's the same concept, which would be added to their tuition. I'm sure that wouldn't go over very well, but I think we as a town have to look at something that's going to generate revenue, because very simply, we don't have the resources, we don't have the space to build out commercial anything, and even if we did talk about it, there would be such a backlash and an outcry from the neighborhoods that it would be very hard to put them through quickly enough. Christine.
I don't know if this is the right time for a discussion, but two observations. Firstly, I don't think that we can take that off the table. If you look at this as commercial development, we can't. I mean, in the same way we can't just say like, oh, well, we tried with the pilot. That if there's going to be a sustainable solution, I think it has to involve some sort of commercial development.
I don't disagree. The question is going to be where and of what magnitude.
Right, but how, and I don't even know how you start to really have that discussion. And then the second thing I would say is, with regard to the pilot program, I would love to see detail around what's been done. I'm a professional salesperson.
Yes.
And I said to Tony Farrington, I'd be happy to help.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't know what they've done. I don't know who they're talking to. I don't know if they're positioning it the right way.
Understood.
So anyway, those two things, like some detail around what's been done would be great.
I think that's good. One more point I want to make, and then we can talk about this. The last issue has to do with the town's assets. And we talked up and down about the Kidder branch. One thing that struck me in conversations that I had subsequently with some special ed people is the idea of bringing some of the special education services that we're currently outsourcing back into the town. And someone suggested that you need a standalone site that is going to be dedicated to special education, that can be customized for the needs, etc. Not to say that we as a town could offer all of the specialized need people what is required, but we could somehow review what is being offered and look to see if the cost of renovating something like the Kidder branch, for example, could be transferred to the school department and then renovated into a special ed center for at least a percentage. And I think the issue would be, let's find out what the cost of doing that would be and what the cost savings for bringing it in-house would be, and if that is at all 50% of what we spend out every year, it's worth looking at. I don't know if that exercise has been done yet. It may have been, but I don't know. I would like to see if it has, and if it hasn't, it should be.
Yeah, to that point, I'm sure there is some exercise that's conducted. It'd be great to get some detail around that.
That's exactly right. So, our mission isn't necessarily to devise it, it's to ask the question and to say, has this been discussed? If it hasn't been discussed, why? If it has been discussed, let's see what the issues are, and if those issues are insurmountable, why? And has anything changed that would make them malleable into something that is acceptable? Because right now the town can't really afford what it's been doing much longer, particularly given the the needs that we're looking at between the firehouses and the fire stations and the schools.
One other thing, it was very disappointing to me that the CFO question didn't pass.
The CFO? Well, I was going to bring that up as the last point. We don't have a CFO. And this is something that historically, customarily, as CFO would do. I think the town, I hope that is brought back up into a, I mean, what did we have, 17% turnout in this last election?
It's a treasurer appointment question, right? Because there can be, the CFO, that can still happen, it's just that the treasurer is essentially still independent.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then it was voted down as, I mean, maybe it's a psychological thing.
It ultimately, I mean, I think the best way of thinking about it, because I think your point is still a good one, which is it actually blunts the ability of the CFO to comprehensively manage the town's finances.
Right.
Because then he doesn't have power over what the treasurer has power over.
Right.
But to have the CFO function is an important one because the treasurer's function is very different from a chief financial officer's function. Having been one, I can tell you that. I mean, you have the treasurer is an accounting function in most organizations. The CFO is the vision thing, as George Bush used to say. And that's an important thing because it's exactly what we need now.
So I guess the question then would be to the select board or to Town Administrator Denny, are you still going to bring a CFO on?
We can afford them.
Are they going to participate? I mean,
Well,
they're going to presumably do some planning.
So this might be your point, Doug, but part of the problem is, it's a good question, but I think part of the issue is, can you hire a talented
Right.
CFO who wants to work
Right.
in a town where the treasurer is elected?
But we also
Well,
have to-
in that case, then the
That is the
question
problem.
is, okay, then
Yeah.
select board, are we going to bring you back up? Are we going to do maybe a better job educating people around why this is so?
People turned out for the current treasurer.
Yeah.
I know, but he campaigned and and there was no
There was no campaign for
communication
the
around the other
position. There was no
side.
position.
Which isn't, and they made it like a versus and it was
Yeah.
not, I didn't see it
Well,
that
again,
way.
I'll go back. There was a 17% turnout in this
Right.
election. I mean, it's abysmal
It's
even
just
by low
sad.
standards, so I'm not surprised. I mean, if this question were brought up when there's a presidential election or a Senate or whatever, I mean, a spring election in April, a rainy day on top of it, 21 days of rain in April this past year, what a surprise.
No contested race.
No contested
Right.
races. I mean, is
It
it a
was literally
surprise?
the only question.
Right.
But and sadly, it was not emphasized the way I think it could have been. But so your point is a strut to this argument that we do have issues and may not have the right talent to figure the way out at this point, because I think that these are very large and looming questions. I think there's some progress being made. I mean, the select board now has a finance committee, which it never had before, and I think that's a very good step towards addressing issues of this magnitude. But these are coming up quickly, and we really can't wait to evolve. We really have to act. We have to do something very, very quickly. And I think that I'm not setting off an alarm bell per se, but I'm just saying next year is not going to be pretty. If you thought this year was ugly, next year is going to be another step in that direction.
No, I agree. It's going to be very bad, and because we don't have the revenues, and unfortunately, residential property taxes do not fill that gap. Even expanding more houses, they're not, because residential housing.
We're not building them that fast.
Well, even if we did,
Yeah, it wouldn't come up to the.
given the services they consume,
Yes.
their net losses in tax revenue.
Yeah,
We need-
effectively, you could look at it that way also.
We-
I mean, if we did a deeper analysis, we would find that we actually do
Yeah,
lose money
we
with
need
residential.
basically a reconfiguration of the commercial areas, and I think what you were referring to before is where the town is not going to have a fourth or an expanded in the commercial districts. They're always going to, and there's only so much land
There's
that's
only
basically
so much
already
land.
full.
Exactly.
Perhaps the planning board can entertain with their talks of overlays of having limited commercial use in residential areas as a result of their overlay work.
But again,
I
the
don't
question
know
is
why
going to
they're
be,
doing that.
will that be significant to fill an annual
It
gap
has
of
to
$10
be-
to $12 million?
It does have to
I would
be
argue no.
significant.
It would have to be
And-
significant growth.
Yeah, and we don't.
very
have that,
unlikely
and
that's gonna
And even
happen.
then, it would be 5 years out.
Yep.
at best.
I'll give you an
growing-
example. I used to live in East Milton, and there was some talk about developing that old DPW site across from.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh.
Screaming,
People went
yelling.
crazy.
People went crazy. That's as remote as I can think of in the town, right? And if people went crazy, but if you said to them, okay, well then the option is, we raise the tax rate significantly. Like, that's not, like, people aren't putting two and two together.
No,
We need
they're
the town needs a
Campaign.
plan, a
town needs a
The
campaign.
plan is the first thing.
The plan is the first thing,
But
but
the
again,
plan would
that's
again happen with
ordinarily,
a
we have a
CFO.
town administrator who's very competent and very capable. Amy Dexter's a great town accountant, but the chief financial officer is the
Yes.
person who is tasked with something of this nature, and we ain't got one.
Unfortunately, we're not gonna get one until.
We're not gonna get one.
We
No, not for at least a
reorganize
year.
the treasurer position because no CFO is going, competent one is going to come in if he doesn't have the full authority to do what he needs to
exactly.
do. He wouldn't have resources.
You had something to say?
Yeah, I think these are excellent points. I just wanted to note two things, especially with regard to saying we're not going to have a CFO. Who's going to be the person doing this? Well, with regard to the special education piece, what are the other towns doing? Because this is an exorbitant, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do
No,
it.
it's a very high percentage.
I could not
But
believe.
we also pay, I know that we pay a higher percentage of the school budget based on the needs of the students than some of our peer towns.
Okay.
I passed this.
But not everybody, I mean, other towns have special ed students,
Yes,
right?
they do.
And
And
they're
they offer
are they
services.
farming them all out?
We offer services in-house as well.
Okay.
I know that. What has to go out is the real question, because you're paying, you're paying transportation, you're paying tuition, in some cases resident tuition, which is, of course,
It needs
if
to
it's
be done, of
warranted, it has
course.
to be done.
Of course.
But if there are other day programs that can be offered in the town,
Mm-hmm.
where we can save on the transportation, and we have a resource, and the only reason I bring up the Kidder branch is that nobody could figure out what to
What
do
to
with
do
it.
with it,
Right.
right?
And so there it is sitting there, and, you know, again, I'm speaking out of ignorance, but if a daycare center can operate in there, which is kind of an educational format to start with, can it not be transformed into a special ed?
Even if it required
space?
significant retrofitting,
Right.
that cost, if
We
it could
have the
take
land, we
away
have the
from
building.
right.
And if you're going to put that cost in, you're removing the operating cost and the tuitions that you're paying out.
And
So
then-
that's why I say that it has to be a cost-benefit analysis done. If it has been done, show it to us. If
Well,
it hasn't been done, why not?
So the only other thing I want to mention really quick, with regard to the pilot stuff, because I work with hospitals, the only thing you didn't, and I'm sure you thought of this in your analysis, the other thing that's changed with Milton Hospital is they're now part of BID.
Oh, yes, I have
And
heard of that.
I can pretty certainly tell you that Plymouth is not waiving the cost of operating, for instance, in BID Plymouth. Boston is not waiving the cost of BID operating so, I mean, why, this, in terms of needing to renegotiate it and reevaluate it, that's a significant, you're talking about a corporate entity.
Understood.
They're expecting this. They're putting aside, they've planned for it when they merged and took, so I think you've identified a clear area where we're just letting the money
Yeah,
go.
you've left it on the
Is
table for
Beth
years.
Israel for profit?
I'm sorry?
Is Beth Israel?
No, they're not
system-
for profit also, but
right.
they are significant generators of cash. I
Yes.
continue
No, I
that to-
understand that, I'm saying, it's not our decision, it's
No.
that's the law.
No, I
No.
mean,
These are mutually negotiated,
Correct.
consensual, voluntary
yes.
contributions that are made. In the city of Boston,
Right.
for example, the universities, to it, I believe every single one contributes something. I can tell you that the winner of the prize for the most voluntary contribution to the city of Boston University is Boston University. They have $33 million a year. It's incredible. The way down the bottom end is Boston College. I've joked that they'll give $100,000 and say a novena. And that's lovely, but you know they also don't have the same presence. BU has a huge footprint in the city. We all get that. But virtually all the others give as well. And the guideline is 25% of what the assessed value, a taxable assessment would be.
Yeah.
That's a guideline. Does anybody follow it? No, not really, but it's better than...
Zero is not the guideline.
Zero isn't a guideline, and zero isn't acceptable either.
On the flip side, I would think that we don't put all our eggs in one basket. The pilot isn't going to be the panacea.
It's not gonna be,
It desperately
no.
needs to be.
We have to
come up.
address it
We
because
really
we need
must
to-
address
we
it.
need
We
to
do have
address
to,
it, right.
but we shouldn't think that this is going to save us year over year.
No, I understand that.
Because they are, and yes, you do. They are, IRS regulations. They have very benefits. There's very little we can do with this, but there are some things because they did, nope. There are some things like they just got approval for like expanded parking or something. There are other things we can use to motivate them, I believe.
Oh, I understand.
But they're not being
Yeah.
coordinated or tied in together.
I think it's
That
time
sort
to
of thing.
become,
We need to be a little more.
serious.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
to get
need
them
a
a little
little bit
more-
more spine in the
Yeah,
negotiations, I believe, so that while it's not gonna be our miracle cure, it's gonna be a good, healthy tonic.
It helps, because
Yeah.
as I say, the gap is widening and it's not gonna get
No,
any smaller
and we
anytime soon.
need something,
Right.
and they need help.
You have more slides?
I think that's the end of it. I didn't want to, I just wanted to hit the points, because we've talked about these things so frequently, but I wanted to graphically show where we are. I mean, because I didn't show the projection at the town meeting. And this projection just, if you extrapolate out, and the way I extrapolated is I took the average growth in revenues for the past, I took just an arithmetic average, very simple arithmetic average of the growth in revenues and the arithmetic average of the growth in our expenses. And so if we get a surprise next year, again, with the healthcare, or we have contracts that are not as favorably negotiated for one reason or another, then these numbers could look even worse.
Just to follow up on pilot, sorry, just wanted to point out that the select board does have, I believe, a committee.
They do.
To deal with those.
Yeah, they
There is
do.
actually a separate committee, not
Yeah,
only their
yes.
subcommittee, to deal with those in the public meetings, and people should actually go and pay attention to what they're doing and show up. And their biggest weapon is going to be more of a moral authority, putting pressure on these entities to be good
Well, a first,
residents, good citizens,
a
good
step in the right
neighbors.
direction would be to pay
Yes,
what's
but
been
it's going to
negotiated
help.
before the end of the
It's
fiscal
going to be
year.
help our side, town speaking, of the negotiations.
Yes,
To actually
yes.
have citizens more involved and aware of what's happening.
But again, this is our purview as the Warrant Committee to
Yes.
raise the flag here and to say we have an issue, we have to address it.
Yes.
We're pointing it out to the town meeting, to the select board, that we feel this is something that has to be addressed.
That was more for our vast viewing audience,
Yes.
to have
and-
more
and-
people
and-
involved.
Right, and the people out in
help that
TV
out.
land
Yes.
who are there, I mean, we're hoping that they will see this as not beating up on Milton Hospital and Curry and Milton Academy, very august, wonderful institutions, but, we as the citizens of the town are bearing a very large burden, and it seems that there are other citizens in town, corporate citizens, if you will, profit or not, who could help out and make the burden less difficult on
But,
all
Mr.
of
Chair,
us.
I think it's important to note that I completely agree with all of you about this, but I think that the general population of the town of Milton does not understand the cutbacks that just happened in this budget. I'm still seeing people realize that the library is not open on Sundays.
It is going to be open on Sunday, though. They
It
found the
is.
money
They
to
found
do
the
that,
money.
yes.
So that was
Oh,
all part
of
of this,
course, yeah.
there's gonna be cutbacks, there's gonna be things that we see in our daily life, and I think that that's part of what somehow the town needs to get out to everybody.
Yeah, it was a very
is-
close run thing.
It was tough, because money came through just before the town meeting to restore the library on Sunday, and I'm sorry you missed that, but they restored the library on Sunday, they restored a few other things, and unfortunately, what they couldn't
Two of their
do,
Tuesday.
yeah, they probably they would have talked about this Tuesday. But we couldn't save all the teaching positions. And the part that is really distressing to me is that, again, $3 million at the margin cost teachers, some teachers their jobs, and police overtime, and the tree planting, and a bunch of other nifty things
Yeah.
that shouldn't have to go. But they did, because we have contractual obligations, we have health insurance that we had to pay for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, the cutbacks that we had to make were not reflective of a philosophy that we didn't want to do this, that, and the other thing, but reflective of a pragmatism that was essential to get us to balance, because there's no cookie jar we could go and break open and find
Well,
not
and
$1 million
there were
in.
also programs that were brought forward and requested funding for, which would have eventually been cost savings.
Yes.
That we were unable
We
to
couldn't fund.
do.
We couldn't fund
Because you
them.
couldn't outlay the initial cash. And
Right.
I don't know how you make people realize that. I don't know how you,
Yeah.
right, I mean, we lost the opportunity to save money because we couldn't put that out there.
Right. Well, the other thing is that when we did discern what was wrong, when we saw this number that came in, particularly the health insurance number, it was so late in the process.
That's true.
That we really couldn't do much of anything, and so we were there, effectively
So are they
trying
doing
to...
anything with that now? Like, where
It's
does that
under
stand?
negotiation.
Yeah.
The whole thing is under negotiation now.
Okay.
Part of those
And
things
I'm sure we will get feedback on this meeting for some of the issues that we have discussed.
Yeah.
And that's just as well, because if we don't start to raise these points now,
Right.
it's going to be very difficult in a year.
Can I ask you a question
Yes,
on the special education?
Yeah.
So it's a non-funded mandates.
Oh, it's an unfunded mandate from the
Why?
state.
Like, why can't we go back to the legislation and look for money there?
I
mean, like,
think
why
it's
can't
a
our
wonderful
politicians
question
do
and a great
something
idea. It
with
has
that? I
been,
mean,
because it's so damn expensive, that's why.
Yeah,
And
but-
they don't want to fund it,
But
because
if
the
we-
money would have to come out of something else. And nobody wants to make those
It comes
choices.
out of local aid, so unless they reevaluate the local aid and reevaluate the way that they pay for the schooling, which they're supposedly working on, but until that.
Shouldn't that be a component of that? If
You'd
we-
think so.
What they
If we
would-
have
they'll
a
never be able to
disproportionate share.
cover what the federal government requires each state and each city and town of that state to provide for all citizens of our town.
Yeah.
So it would actually have to go further up the chain
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
federal government and what they pay the state to reimburse them for their costs.
And I don't think we can think this administration is going to be friendly to anything like
But if you
that.
think about like the new casinos that are opening, there's a lot of cash that should be coming in. It's new cash.
We'll see.
And,
It just
you know,
goes to general
why-
revenue. It depends on if the
No,
legislature
it
just-
actually doesn't.
they
There's a
decide-
13-point place where all the money has to go to.
Set aside.
And they have already carved that out when they did the legislation for the gambling in Massachusetts. And so unless you're one of those 13 points, that's where that money is gonna go to. And it's all formulated. And also, don't forget, the Springfield Casino is not making the money, the revenue that everybody thought it was gonna make.
No.
So
Yeah.
they're laying people off in Springfield.
I think we're supposed to call it gaming, right?
With that too,
I
yeah.
mean,
It was another one of those
yeah.
cash cows
So
they thought
just-
was coming
yeah.
in. And
Well,
it's not. You can't hope for these
yeah, but
things.
the prodigal son is home, and we're going to have to slay the fatted calf. So
Yeah.
that's the way it is. Well, anyway, that is my presentation. Thank you for your comments. Do we have any new business?
Thank you for your organization and your leadership for the past year.
Yes, Mr.
Group
Chair,
effort.
it's
Thank you all for
fabulous.
coming. You've been tremendous. Everybody's pitched in, and I hope you all return. I certainly look forward to it because I think we did some good work for the town. So, that having been said, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your service, and we'll notify everybody about the next meeting. And the chair, if there's no new business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for discussion, so it's totally.